Welcome back, Pointer fans. Wisdom Wednesday once again. I believe this is our 7th edition of Wisdom Wednesday, which each week seems to go by faster and faster as we climb closer to the fall seasons. We're excited. Last week, we heard from Dan Hauser. What an accomplished man and a Pointer, and the message he was able to send to our student athletes from somebody who's lived life at the highest level, pro sports and accomplished, but sees the lens as a Pointer and always is connecting. And I can tell you, fans, in the last week since we've aired, Dan has connected with several former Pointers who've reached out to him to say, hey, we're proud of you. And that's who Dan Hauser is. And this week, we're joined with somebody who I continue to say is on our Mount Rushmore of female athletes who've ever played at UW-Stevens Point. And Amanda, and it's Amanda Bailey now, but in our world, we know her as Nechuta or Huda. Amanda Bailey is now the head coach at Luther, but I'll tell you what, she had one of the best careers any athlete has ever had here. We go back, a 2-time All-American in basketball, including the National Player of the Year recognition in 2005, 3-time All-Conference, All-WIAC player, and twice was named Player of the Year. Left the all-time leading scorer, 1,801 points. And probably what she would say as her most impressive stat is during her time, the Pointers had 101 wins and only 19 losses, including the national championship in 2002 and then back to the Final Four in 2004. Was inducted into our Hall of Fame in 2012, a member of the D3 Hoops All-Decade team, and also the Centennial, the WIC Centennial recognized the all-time women's basketball team, a member of the all-time women's basketball team in the conference. But it doesn't stop there, you guys. She was also a heralded track athlete, was a 4-time All-American in the shot put and was an All-American in the discus, was elected to the Wisconsin Track Coaches Association Hall of Fame, and has since moved on. She was at once our assistant coach here and now has been the head coach at Luther for 9 years. One of the things, Coach, that always stands out to me is somebody who has to go into a program who's kind of, in flux a little bit, has to sort it out for a year, wins 6 games in their first year as you're kind of sorting things out. 4 years later, 23-6, and didn't take you long to get them moving. Been to the conference championship 4 times in 9 years. Been to the NCAA tournament, won a game in the NCAA tournament, 136 wins as a head coach. You guys, I only have about 20 minutes with her, and I could probably spend all 20 just talking about how cool you are, Coach. We're happy to have you, and you have been, such a gem in what Point has been and continues to be. How you doing in Iowa?
I'm doing really well. I think we're all trying to figure out what life is like right now at home for work and what the fall is going to look like for us.
Yeah, Iowa's no different than Wisconsin right now. We're living in this crazy world, and that's where this kind of drove from was, it feels like 9 years ago, but it's starting into 9 weeks, I believe. We decided that we were going to change the message. Instead of all of the statistics and death rates and infection rates, we said, you know what, we have such a huge history here at Stevens Point, and the future in athletics everywhere is bright. Let's talk about that. And we were going to go reach back out and grab some of our legends. We're happy to have you with us today, Coach. So thanks for coming on. To jump into it, our fans, especially our fans who have been around in the early 2000s, would have seen you play as a high school player. And, those fans that know a little bit about my background, I coached at lacrosse from 97 to 2000. The biggest blessing I had was that I got out in 2000. I didn't have to coach against you when you came here to Point, but grew up right here in central Wisconsin in Mosinee, and then made the decision to stay close to home. How was that for you, reflecting back, being a local player and then coming to Point and having such a great career? What did that mean to you?
I think the biggest thing for me was having my family be such a huge part of everything that I did. Being close, obviously every game was a home game. Coming from a really, really big family and having my youngest sister be 5 when I left for college, it was important to me to stay connected to them, and being being right there. I mean, my parents, my siblings, and my grandparents were there every step of the way.
You know, you've had a chance to come back and coach at Stevens Point. You know, and when I look, you know how athletic directors are. They always say, if you can't play, coach. If you can't coach, become an AD, right? So that was my path. Once I couldn't do it anymore, I became an AD. But I look at spreadsheets a lot now, and all of a sudden we had this huge jump in attendance. And I look down, it's like, oh yeah, that's the Luther women's basketball game. This whole crowd of Nechuta family coming to see you when you're coaching. But you know, when you were here, you know, we had an opportunity to kind of reflect on your career here. You know, two-sport athlete and two at the highest level. You know, how were you able to manage being a great student and then going on to get a master's and the things you've done, and then the pressures and I guess requirements of being such a talented and high-level athlete in two sports?
You know, when I started to contemplate the idea of playing at Stevens Point, and maybe I should even talk about that. That was kind of a funny story of how I ended up there. Coming from a pretty good high school program and having two players ahead of me to go the scholarship route, that was kind of what I was being told that I needed to do, was to be looking for a scholarship. And I was the first one in my family to go off to college, so it was all very, very new to us, very overwhelming. And I honestly, I didn't like talking to people on the phone, which is really funny since that's what I do all the time, is depend on high school kids to talk with me on the phone, but I was not one to talk. And so I was super overwhelmed and had just come off of a summer of playing AAU basketball with Janelle McCarville, which was an amazing experience to play with her. And then I got this letter in the mail, and it was like a point flyer, like the dog newsletter that Shirley used to do. And the title of the first article was Nechuta chooses Stevens Point. You know, and it was a fake article, and it said, thought this would grab your attention, and it did. It honestly did. And I said to my mom, hey mom, what if I went to Point? And of course, you know, mom didn't really want me to go too far away. And she's like, well, that'd be awesome. I'm like, well, why don't you call them and see if I can come for a visit? And she did. And we, you know, set up a visit, and Coach Egner knew from the start that I wanted to run track as well, that was something that I was really passionate about. And honestly, coming out of high school, I was probably a better track athlete and had more potential in that area than even in basketball. And so we went, I think it was early October of my senior year, and went down and visited and had a chance to sit down. And from that point, I mean, I was recruited as a two-sport athlete, and they knew that was what I wanted to do. And that's the way that I was talked to about the opportunities that there were at Stevens Point. I got to meet the team, got to really sit down and talk with Coach Egner, who scared the crap out of me from the beginning. And I left there, and I remember saying to her, and obviously I know that there wasn't a signing, but I remember leaving and saying, all right, where do I sign? I'm coming to Point. Now I look back and think, wow, that I really made it easy on her. I just showed up and said I was going to come. And that doesn't happen. As you know, as a coach, you just don't have someone walk in one moment and say, yep, I'm coming. But I think the biggest thing was that I had coaches at Point that understood what was important to me, that created environments that I could be successful in, never made me choose which sport I was more important. When I was in season with one sport, I was in season for that one. There wasn't a pull between them. You know, I was just really set up with great people to create an environment for me to be successful, and nobody ever held me back. Sometimes they probably should have, but I think that was what allowed me to be successful in both of those sports.
Well, you know, legend grows, right? As you know, the 14-inch fish becomes a 24-inch fish the longer you tell the story. But I think there's a lot of truth to this. So the rumor has it that, you know, back in the WIC when you played, there used to be bye weekends. You know, you used to not play because there was 9 teams then, right, with Superior in the league. So there was always a bye weekend. Now, legend has it that on a bye weekend, you snuck down to the other locker room, switched jerseys really quickly, walked out onto the indoor track, threw some stuff around, and became, you know, a national qualifier during the women's basketball season in indoor track. Is there some truth to that?
There is. I mean, I don't remember sneaking. I feel like Coach Edgar knew I was doing it. But yeah, it was always kind of that, we don't make it to nationals, the Final Four for basketball. I want to have that safe throw in just to be able to qualify. But I also understood that I was using a indoor season of eligibility if we did make it on. And like I said, I was supported all around. I had great coaches, and it was awesome. I mean, I don't know how to explain that. I don't think that everybody has that experience. We talk about Division III and about being able to do what you want to do and have those opportunities. But I don't think that there are coaches out there that would allow someone to have that experience. And so I'm just very, very grateful that I was able to work with many coaches that allowed me to try things and just ultimately reach the goals that I wanted.
And we're going to get into being the transition from player to coach in Division III, but I want to go back. We've highlighted the O2 team several times here, and we're highlighting part of the Power of the Pointers series is a 13-week series highlighting each of our 13 team champions, and then all of these things that come along with it. You were a member of that O2 team, as a freshman. So the only thing you knew as a sophomore is, well, we win the national championship here. That's just what we do. But no, I know it was a lot harder than that. And I tease you, Coach. But what was it like, to come in and be part of such a magical season, going to WashU and upsetting the giant that was Nancy Fahey and the WashU Bears, and all the things that came along with winning Coach Egner's national championship, her only one, and the second one in program history?
I mean, you talk about coming in as a freshman and setting the standards high as far as, if we don't win, it's a losing season, right? If we don't win at all. But honestly, sometimes, I'm so glad that I was a freshman. I was so ignorant to what was going on. I had no idea about WashU and as many wins as they've had. And I really just followed what our upperclassmen and leaders were asking of us. They had really worked hard in the years prior to get to where they were. To have Carrie Groshek on the team as a fifth year, I just feel like I was able to learn so much, and I was also able to make so many mistakes and not have it affect us. I don't think everyone has that luxury of, if you have that pressure early on as a freshman where you have to come in and play huge minutes. I got to play a supporting role, but also felt like very much a part of what we were doing. It was amazing. I don't know if you can put it into words. Had an opportunity to watch the game, the national championship game with my kids this year, and they kept asking me, who's Nechuta? Why are they saying that anyway? But I just sat there and I kind of shook my head, and of course I'm critiquing myself, but then all these emotions are coming up, and I feel like I remember that year, even though it was my first year and there were many that came afterwards, that is the year, that is the team that I will always just feel so connected. There was something special that happened. It was the tightest group I've ever been a part of. We could go into battle and be confident, and it didn't matter who we were going against. I don't know. I would have done anything, and sometimes I did whatever those upperclassmen, even though I shouldn't have, whatever they told me to do. But it was amazing.
And then to get back there 2 years later, in 14 as a junior, different story then a little bit. You went from supporting cast as a freshman and do everything, do what's needed to, in some ways this is kind of your team. You were player of the year, and what was the difference? Talk to our student athletes too, and your experience about, the transition from, hey, I'm a supporting cast member and a good one, to, I might be the lead in the play right now. I need everybody to make sure that, we're to be great in order to be there. But what was that difference like for you?
I think for me, it took a little bit longer to become that vocal leader that I needed to be. And I don't even know if by the time I graduated, I had hit where I should have been. I'd always been able to be a leader by example and set the tone in that way. And we had a great group of seniors that year when I was juniors too. And with Andre Kramer and Tara Schmidt and Cassandra Hoyer, And things felt real strong, and we felt like we had everything going. And then unfortunately, we, losing Cassandra Hoyer to a knee or injury in the run as a starter, as a senior, and it was hard. And I think we found a way to make it to the Final Four, but then things just kind of started to slowly unravel. And it wasn't that connection, and it was nothing like, it wasn't that we were a less talented team or anything like that. Sometimes just things don't go exactly right. We look back, and I think we lost the first game in the tournament by 5, and then maybe by 1, and it was just coming up short in a couple different areas. And I think at that point, you just kind of realize how special that 2002 year was, and how many things have to fall in place, and how many people have to be willing to take on whatever role is necessary and sacrifices, and the type of leadership that you really need to make that happen. But I don't know, it makes 2002 that much more special. And honestly, I have not watched the games from my junior year at the Final Four. I still struggle because I think I took on a little too much responsibility of not being able to follow through with those. But what are you gonna do?
Well, I think we've, 16 years later, I think we're okay, Coach. I'm with you. No, you're an ultimate competitor, and you've touched on a lot of things that. For those of you that only know Coach now, Coach Bailey, I've had the privilege in my career to know you as Amanda Nechuta, the high school player, when I was coaching college women's basketball, and then watching you at Point be so successful, and then becoming colleagues as I was also a head women's basketball coach, and get to watch you and develop in your career. So now the folks, maybe your players watch this and they know you as Coach Bailey, and there's this whole other chapter of your life before this that those of us that know you know that you're a very humble person, and the limelight is not really what you're always about. And for those of you listening, you need to know that when we reached out to Nechuta, as we know her, to say, Coach, come on the show, the first words back to her teammate were, "I'm not sure I should be." Are you kidding me? I mean, you're on our Mount Rushmore, Coach. And, so all of those experiences, first as a player, then as a coach at Point, right? And you had coached at Mosinee High School, went back home and coached for a little bit, and did some youth coaching. And then you were handed the keys to the car at Luther. And I know that you believe in Division III athletics, and you quickly turned that program into a power here in the Midwest. What are the values? What did you take from being a player into being a coach? How has it evolved in the last, 9 years as being a head coach? How do you feel about that?
I thought a lot about that. And I think it comes down to just a couple things. I think the biggest thing is being happy with where you're at, not always looking for the next place to be, or feeling that, you should be somewhere else, or you should be wanting something else. When I chose to go to Point, I was committed to Point, even though people told me that I was trying to be a big fish in a small sea, and I should do something else, I should challenge myself. But I felt lucky at 18 to know who I was, and Point was the absolute best thing for me. And then when I needed to make a decision to move on and go somewhere else, and I came to Luther, I mean, it was the same thing. I'm a person that likes to commit to something. I like to work hard at one thing and not be looking for the next opportunity. This is where I want to be. This is a chance for me to really learn what Luther is about, figure out the best way to be a coach here, and the type of student athletes that we need to have here. And so I think just having something that you can own and commit to it is really important. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie, I was coached by a very intense national championship coach and a national player or coach of the year, and there is some Shirley Egner in me, and I'm proud of that. And I know that my players would say that I'm intense at practice. I'm intense on the court. My face is going to say a lot of what's going on. But I think they also know that I love them and I care about them. And as a player, I had no regrets. And that's how I want them to leave here too, is just absolutely having no regrets for what they've done. Yeah, I think that's some of the big things. Division III is who I am. Like I said, I'm not a flashy person. I never will be. I'm kind of a small town girl, and this is where I'm able to help people and give them the best basketball experience I possibly can, but then also knowing that they're going to go off and do great things and give back to their communities as well.
Well, and you've certainly done that. I mean, in the 9 short years, it goes fast, doesn't it? I mean, to think 9 years already. And then if you think about it, 9 years is like, man, how did 9 years go by so quickly? But you've done a tremendous job there. And I've watched the Luther program grow into being, reflecting who you are. And that's, I'll tell you what, you do not want to play Luther ever, because it doesn't matter if you're up 20 or down 20, those kids fight, and you play an up-tempo style and you're coming at you, and it's like, okay, well, and I haven't had the chance as a head coach to be up 20 for all of those of you that are watching, but I've been on the down 20, and the tap doesn't shut off. It's, Luther basketball is a fun style to watch, and you've been able to bring in lots of players every year and do a lot of great things and turn out a lot of great people. And in central Wisconsin, if you haven't been to Decorah, Iowa, or haven't been to Luther, check it out. It's a cool little community. It really kind of is. It could probably be called Luther with the town around it, right? I mean, the college kind of drives the town, and having, went to lacrosse and coached lacrosse just across the river, not too far, 45 minutes or so. And what you've done there, Coach, has been really tremendous. And we're proud of you here in central Wisconsin and Stevens Point. And when your players watch this, we know that you're a Norse, you're a Luther, right? But we want you to be both. We love you here too. So, what's customary in this show is that we leave the parting words to our guests and our Wisdom Wednesday guests. And thank you for coming on, Coach Nechuta Bailey. We're going to call you that up here, Coach Bailey. Thanks for coming on, and we'll leave the final words to you.
If I was to give some advice to our athletes and current young alums, I would just say to take a moment to think about everything that your coaches have done for you, regardless of what your situation was or your experiences were. Your coaches, throughout the time that you were a part of their program, were always making decisions best for the team and sacrificing a lot of things for you. And why I'm saying this is not because I'm a coach, but because of how grateful I am for coaches like Coach Egner. I'm really happy she still has hair left after coaching me. And I know many times I've come back and just told her that I'm sorry for being a pain in the butt, and I'm glad that she put up with me. But sometimes it can be lonely as a coach too, as you do a lot of things that people don't necessarily know, but I just think it'd be important. Now is a great time to reach out to your former coaches, send them a text or something, and just reminding them of something that was really special to you, or just making those connections again, because I don't think a coach ever makes a decision lightly, and everything they do is for their players.
As always, Coach, great message. Thank you for coming on. Pointer fans, just as a show note, we won't be on next Wednesday with it being a holiday week. We're taking Monday and Wednesday off. We'll be back again in 2 weeks for Wisdom Wednesday. Coach Bailey, thanks for coming on once again. We'll see you guys here in 2 weeks again. Thanks, everybody.